The Blackbeard Pirates have been making major moves since the final saga started. They've raided Amazon Lily and captured Kobe, and then captured an even bigger fish, with Garp, the hero of the Marines. They've looted Law and the Heart Pirates of their road poneglyphs, and also infiltrated Egghead Island to steal the identities of one of the Gorosei. With Oda building up both the world government and the Blackbeard Pirates as final saga villains, there's an ongoing debate on which antagonist group will come last. But just like I did in my previous Cross Guild and Elbaf video, we're going to examine the themes and structure of the story to see where the Blackbeard conflict fits in. And based on that, it only makes sense that after Elbaf, the Blackbeard Pirates are up next. So hopefully by the end of this video, I've convinced you that while the world government may be the final villains, the Blackbeard Pirates will be the final pirate conflict in the series, in the penultimate battle for the One Piece. Now in my previous video, I discussed how Blackbeard vs Shanks will happen right after the Elbaf arc. And while you don't have to watch that video to watch this video, watching that video first will help you understand how I came to these conclusions. In short, I believe that Blackbeard will kill Shanks right before we reach Laugh Tale. This isn't a very bold or unique theory, as the death of the mentor is a common and essential part of the hero's journey. But let's look specifically at what this does for the villain's journey. I think everyone can agree that if Luffy and Shanks fought, it would be a friendly and honorable fight between the two crews. In the Romance Dawn one-shots, which were basically the pilot chapters for One Piece, Oda made a distinction between two types of pirates. Peace mains are pirates who only loot evil pirates and are mostly in it for the adventure, which we can see in the series through pirates like Roger, Whitebeard, Shanks, and Luffy. The second type of pirates, Morganeers, are your more standard versions, who pillage and loot for their own personal gain. This definition brings to mind pirates like Big Mom or Kaido, but the most potent example has to be Blackbeard. Teach has been the antithesis of Shanks from the start. They were both rookie pirates on Roger and Whitebeard's crew respectively, but while Shanks went on to make a name for himself following in his captain's footsteps, Teach laid low for years and waited for his opportunity to betray his crew and form his own. Shanks took the slow and steady path to becoming an emperor, building his skill set and crew around Haki, while Teach has been plotting and scheming, with each successful plan resulting in a huge leap of his notoriety and power. Oda has given each Yonko their own strategy in this arms race, and he specifically gave the Blackbeard Pirates the method of thievery, killing, and looting others for the most prominent resource in the series, Devil Fruits, which makes Blackbeard the exemplary Morganeer pirate. Shanks, being his antithesis, has been constantly warning us from the start about Blackbeard, from his meeting with Whitebeard to potentially snitching to the Gorosei. Shanks' mission has been set on maintaining the balance and peace of the One Piece world, which makes him the exemplary peace man. So it's only fitting that these two will face off, not only serving as a clash of the two types of pirates, but to transition the story from the honor-focused storyline of Elbaf to the tense and climactic pirate battle of Laugh Tale. Shanks being defeated and killed by Blackbeard would make such an emotional and great midpoint to the final saga. It seems like Shanks can't lose to Blackbeard, as he's not only portrayed to be stronger, but also a pure Haki user seems to be the kryptonite to a Devil Fruit merchant like Blackbeard, as Haki is supposed to transcend mere Devil Fruit abilities. But if Blackbeard gains his third and final Devil Fruit, it may just be too much for Shanks. This conflict could be the setup for Luffy's match with Blackbeard, where he will exhibit Haki that surpasses his mentor and can compete with Blackbeard's 3 Devil Fruits. But the exact details on how that can happen can be discussed later when we get to that fight. Now before we discuss the potential matchups and storylines between the Straw Hats and Blackbeard Pirates, we have to discuss when and where this conflict may happen. I know a lot of people imagine the final saga as a big battle royale, which is how Oda described it in the Jump Festa note, but as we saw in the outside world during Egghead, the One Piece world itself is the battle royale. Oda isn't just throwing every faction at each other at the same time. As we see in the Egghead arc, even within its miniature storylines, Oda carefully assigns each conflict to its perfectly fitting location. Law vs Blackbeard took place on Winter Island, telling us the fight is a no-holds-barred, winner-takes-all bout. Kid vs Shanks took place in Warland Elbaf, showing us how fearsome the red-hair pirates and the giants are in battle when you declare war on their homeland. Garp vs Kuzan took place on Hachinosu, showing us a teacher inspiring his new students to carry on his philosophy, while at the same time, that philosophy is being challenged as he faces his old student. Hachinosu was my favorite out of these storylines, and was the perfect location for its conflict, as the endless swarms of pirates in the Beehive showcase the heroism of the marine hero Garp. But there doesn't seem to be anything else in Hachinosu to explore, and we know that Oda usually saves each arc location for one grand adventure, while trying not to reveal or revisit it too much before or after the Straw Hats visit. So for that reason, I don't think Hachinosu will be the location for the Blackbeard arc, which goes against the trend of most One Piece villains having their dedicated arc being in their base of operations, like Big Mom in Whole Cake Island or Kaido in Wano. Now you could say Blackbeard isn't stationary like other One Piece villains, and he's written to span multiple story arcs, similar to the final bosses in other series. But just like Blackbeard, Doflamingo was a villain who was always on the move as well, before he got his own dedicated arc of Dressrosa. So I think even if Oda is writing a roaming villain, one of the best things about his writing is how he ends the villain's story in the most fitting location and in the most thematically potent way. I believe that Blackbeard won't go down in Hachinosu, not because he will go down in an unrelated location, but because Oda's been saving him for an even better fitting location. Similarly to how we did in my previous Cross Guild and Elbaf theory video, let's use the process of elimination to determine where Blackbeard will fit in. After Egghead, it seems as if we have 3 more arcs and islands left to go: Elbaf, Laugh-Tale, and Mary Joa. Egghead Island being so unexpected makes it possible that there could be more surprise arcs, like a possible Revolutionary Army arc, which I speculated would happen on the island of Vera, or perhaps a Marine arc, which could potentially happen on the new Marine Fort. But for now, let's just work with what we know. And based on that, I've already laid out my argument in the last video on why the Cross Guild and Red Hair Pirates will have their shine on Elbaf, with the Davy Bag fight against the Straw Hat Pirates. And it seems to be the common consensus that Imu, the Gorosei, and the God's Knights will be dealt with on Mary Joa, which I will expand on more in the next video. So by the process of elimination, it seems as if Laugh-Tale is where the Blackbeard Pirates will take center stage. If there is going to be a villain for the Laugh-Tale arc, Blackbeard makes more sense than any other. Blackbeard's iconic introduction shows us how he's the opposite in Luffy when it comes to taste, but at the core they are chasing the same dream. Unlike Law and Mid, Blackbeard is Luffy's true rival and has been matching him in his progression throughout the series. So it only makes sense that the race for the One Piece will be centered on these 2 characters, who have the same dreams and ambition, but 2 different visions for the world. So this is the perfect place for these 2 to duke it out, with the winner being crowned as the Pirate King, which is the only pirate that is capable of taking down the world's government and imposing their own vision of freedom on the world. While Blackbeard on Laugh-Tale makes sense because they're going to be racing for the One Piece, which is on Laugh-Tale, we don't really know much about the island to say that they will actually fight there, and it's very possible that they will fight before they reach Laugh-Tale. We know that Oda likes to create arcs by foreshadowing and using story beats from future ones, so I don't think it's unreasonable to infer what Laugh-Tale will be like by using previous arcs. As the story goes on, we're starting to see how much foreshadowing lies within the Skypiea saga, and I believe it gives us the blueprint for the Laugh-Tale storyline. This pirate story is supposed to be a hunt for the One Piece treasure, which is on Laugh-Tale, but the story has been mostly preoccupied by getting to the end of the Grand Line and gathering the poneglyphs, which is mostly done through fighting the villain of the arc, who happens to just get in the way. The only arc in One Piece that has mainly focused on hunting for treasure is Skypiea, and during Jaya, Bellamy mentions the One Piece and the City of Gold in the same breath. So it is possible that this is because finding both of these treasures are going to be very similar journeys, with the City of Gold being the mini teaser that Oda gave us before we take on the grand journey of finding the One Piece. But what does this have to do with Blackbeard? Well, if Skypiea was a scaled down version of Laugh-Tale, then I think Lodestar Island will be the miniature version of Jaya. If I were just choosing from the story arc so far, I would say the one that has the most importance for Blackbeard is Jaya. Blackbeard has made his biggest moves toward his goal in Impel Down, Marineford, and Egghead, but Jaya is where he and his goals were introduced to us in the first place. So if you assume that Oda chose Jaya for Blackbeard's introduction for a reason, and Blackbeard will be the final obstacle before the Straw Hats claim the One Piece on Laugh-Tale, we can find out the location where Blackbeard will strike by looking where these 2 points intersect. For that reason, I believe Blackbeard will strike on the Jaya arc of the Laugh-Tale storyline, which is Lodestar Island. Now I did say that we don't know enough about Laugh-Tale to place Blackbeard there definitively, and to be fair, we know even less about Lodestar Island. Lodestar Island is the final island in the Grand Line, and where the Roger Pirates found out there is another island undetected by the log post, which is Laugh-Tale, and that's basically all we know. If we're going to try to think up storylines based on this, you could include Eustace Kid and more lore on the magnet fruit and how that relates to the magnetic field of the Grand Line and log posts, and if Oda was going for a Kid comeback arc in Elbaf, it could culminate here. But I think given how linked this island is to navigation, it can be the place where a certain character can get their desperately needed spotlight. Like I mentioned earlier, the Skypiea saga is the only One Piece storyline that primarily focuses on a treasure hunt, and Nami is given more spotlight in this arc as she led the hunt for the City of Gold. Many fans view Sanji as the 3rd most important character, due to the monster trio becoming more important as fights dominate the series, but in reality, Nami is supposed to be the 3rd lead of the series. Unfortunately, as the Battle Shonen ramps up its fights, If the female lead isn't a fighter, she can easily fall to the wayside as adventure takes a backseat to action. I hope Oda can remedy this by having Nami take center stage on Lodestar Island. The Straw Hats technically can just skip straight to Laugh-Tale, but we know Luffy wants to be thorough in his adventure, and the crew can't just copy the Roger Pirates, but must find out the truth for themselves, which is why Inuarashi tells Nami that she's still on the right path. So for that reason, I believe Lodestar is where Nami will showcase her navigation skills, assembling the coordinates for the road poneglyphs to find the location of Laugh-Tale. Lodestar Island will be the launching point to Laugh-Tale, similarly to how Jaya was a launching point to Skypiea. If Laugh-Tale is really on the moon, like some theorize, then that could be another parallel to Skypiea, with the Straw Hats blasting off to the sky being a smaller version of the Straw Hats blasting off into space. And if Jaya was sent up to the White Sea 400 years ago by the Knockup Stream, perhaps Laugh-Tale or the moon itself was sent up to space 800 years ago. But Laugh-Tale could also be underwater like recent manga chapters are hinting towards, perhaps being the capital of the ancient kingdom. That would make an interesting contrast where the City of Gold was sent into the sky, but Mont Blanc Nolan assumed that it sunk under the sea, which is actually what happened to the other great treasure, the One Piece. By now I hope you can see how many connections there are between the Skypiea and Laugh-Tale storylines, but it still isn't obvious whether Blackbeard will strike on Lodestar or Laugh-Tale itself. An argument you can make for the latter is that the biggest antagonist should be saved for last. Ultimately, Bellamy was not that big of a deal in Jaya, and NL was the big threat once that Straw Hats got to Skypiea. So perhaps Lodestar will be a simple pit stop like the return to Sabaody, and the Blackbeard Pirates will be waiting for the Straw Hats on Laugh-Tale. My contention with this is that NL as a false god seems to be foreshadowing Emu and not Blackbeard. If Laugh-Tale really is on the moon, I think this can be the perfect way for NL to return to the story. This time he could be the herald for the One Piece treasure, the same way Red Skull guarded the Soul Stone in Infinity War. Hopefully I've convinced you that Blackbeard will either strike on Lodestar Island or Laugh-Tale itself, but there isn't enough information about either island to make definite judgments. I'll let you decide in the comments which sounds more likely to you, but in my view, it just makes much more sense for Blackbeard to strike on Lodestar, because of the simple fact that Blackbeard ends the Jaya arc chasing after Luffy, but only narrowly misses him. So I think this will be fulfilled within the real Jaya arc, Lodestar Island, where they will actually fight, and Blackbeard will be cleanly defeated before they reach the real Skypiea, which is Laugh-Tale. I made a theory a while back that Caribou will be the 10th Titanic captain of the Blackbeard Pirates, and of course this was before it was revealed to be Kuzan. While this now seems laughably wrong, the underlying idea that Caribou will join the Blackbeard Pirates has now been confirmed to be true. Caribou has been eavesdropping on the Straw Hats throughout the New World, collecting information about the ancient weapons, so it only makes sense that he'll deliver that information to the Yonko that has been built up the most, Blackbeard. And now with the Yamato cover story underway, it seems very likely that it will end with Blackbeard showing up to Wano to obtain Pluton, similarly to how the Whole Cake Island cover story showed them capturing Pudding at the very end. Teach might actually show up personally, as if Pluton is dormant underneath Wano, his Quake Fruit might be the only way to unleash the ancient weapon. At the same time, it might be weird if Blackbeard is the one that opens the borders of Wano by tearing down the wall, because it appeared that Zunisha was ready to do it, only waiting for Momonosuke's permission. So it's possible that Momonosuke, Yamato, and the Scabbards may have to defend Wano from Blackbeard, which would explain why Oda was stressing the idea that Wano needed defenders after the Straw Hats left. The Yamato cover story will likely end midway through Elbaf with the tease of these events, and then we, the audience, probably will have to wait until the Elbaf arc ends to find out what happens alongside the Straw Hats. Whether we get a flashback or this battle's off screen, the result will be the same either way, and the latter option actually makes it even more obvious, because you know what they say, if it's an off-screen fight, always bet on Blackbeard. But Caribou didn't just overhear about Pluton. In Fishman Island, Caribou also learned that Shirahoshi was the ancient weapon Poseidon. Now that it's been revealed that the One Piece world is flooding, Poseidon, Noah, and the Fishman's place in the story is filling in nicely. I can explore the narrative role of the ancient weapons in the next video, but I think there's a character who will be related who will have his conclusion in this arc, and that is Kuzan. Kuzan is one of the most nuanced characters in One Piece, and has gone through one of the most drastic character arcs, from being a loyal soldier for the government to one of the 10 Titanic captains for the Blackbeard Pirates. But what's interesting is it seems as if Kuzan had just gone from one evil organization to another, but we know that Kuzan is a genuinely good guy, and we are assured at every turn that he's still the same person that he was before, and that leaving the government has given him even more clarity. Kuzan seems to be with the Blackbeard Pirates only to pursue his own agenda, so what exactly could that be? Many theorize that Kuzan is secretly working for Sword or the Revolutionaries, perhaps just providing intel on Blackbeard. But personally, I take Kuzan's word and believe that Kuzan is truly done with the Marines and his character is going to explore the good that can be done, unconstrained by that system. I'm giving Kuzan the benefit of the doubt and assume that he wasn't sent by Garp, Dragon, or Akainu, but was genuinely convinced that tagging along with Blackbeard will get him closer to his own goal. So what is Kuzan's true goal? To me, it's something that he wouldn't be able to do while in the Marines, but be able to do as a Blackbeard pirate, yet it's still a noble cause that he is personally invested in. So based on how Ohara was the event that changed Kuzan's entire ideology and sent him down the path that he's on now, I think his goal is to atone by carrying on the will of the Ohara scholars and learning about the void sentry and the ancient weapons. The point where this can intersect with Blackbeard's agenda is the awakening of Pluton. Now, Blackbeard having Pluton is probably just as bad as the world government having it, but you have to remember that Aokiji participated in a buster call, raising an entire island, and the sight of Akainu's battleship destroying a ship full of innocents is burned into his mind, being the turning point of his entire life. The entire Water 7 saga in general, in which Aokiji's character was first fleshed out, was all about the government trying to get their hands on the Pluton blueprints. So if Aokiji has been researching this ever since he left the Marines, it would only make sense that he would want the world to have a deterrent in the case that the world government built another Pluton or had access to another ancient weapon. Ultimately, I think Kuzan will learn the hard way that putting any trust into Blackbeard whatsoever is a bad idea, and he will be betrayed first. Now that we've got the time and place sorted out, it's time for the matchups. Excluding Kuzan, there are 10 Blackbeard pirates and 10 Straw Hats, which gives us the perfect chance for 1v1 fights. I'm going to leave out characters like Yamato, Momonosuke, Bonnie, and Vivi, who could potentially be on the Sunny by the time this arc rolls around, but I don't think they have a place in this fight. In my view, this will be the penultimate battle for the Straw Hats in this series. A dishonorable pirate battle, following the honorable Davyback fight of Elbaf, and preceding the climactic final war at Marijoa. So I'll be matching up each Straw Hat with the Blackbeard pirate that best fits them, and who can uniquely challenge them through their underhanded methods, which I think Oda has set up better than any other villain group in the entire series. The most obvious matchup besides the two captains is the fight between the two snipers, Ussop versus Van Auger. It's actually insane that this guy is fated to be an Ussop victim, given how cold he is, especially in the anime, where Toei has him busting Cracker's biscuit soldiers easier than Gear 4th Luffy. I know it's non-canon, but I still can't imagine Ussop taking a single shot from this guy without immediately dying, even though John Bart did the same thing in canon. But since this is a sniper battle, Oda can just have these two fight from extremely long range, with the battle being decided by one good shot. I don't think this will be the first sniper battle in the series, as I talked about a potential Ussop vs Yasopp in my previous Elbaf video, and I believe that is when Ussop will finally learn how to use his observation haki at will. Van Auger will still have a big advantage though, because even if Ussop can sense where he is, Auger can just teleport to a new location before Ussop can get his shot off. And if Auger can teleport his bullets, or is a better close range fighter than Ussop, then he's finished. The only hope I can see for Ussop is if he learned Future Sight, allowing him to land a shot on Auger by predicting where he's going to teleport, aiming not where he's at, but where he's going to be. Despite him being the weakest Straw Hat, I think Oda places the importance of Usopp's fights just below the monster trio. So if Shanks and Mihawk will lose to Blackbeard and Shiryuu to motivate Luffy and Zoro respectively, perhaps Yasopp will be defeated by Auger in a sniper battle, and Ussop will have to defeat him to claim the title of Sniper King, but for real this time. Now let's talk about the second weakest Straw Hat, Nami. Like with Ussop, we have a pretty strong case for a matchup based on the occupation in the crew. So I think Nami will fight the Demon Sheriff and the Navigator for the Blackbeard Pirates, Laffite. Now if you put all of your money in Laffite stocks and have matched him up with Sanji, you might not like this, but I think this makes the most sense when you really think about it. The main reason why people are going all in on the Laffite agenda is simply because he's the only Blackbeard pirate who hasn't revealed his abilities yet, and is still a mystery. So while it's true that he has the narrative potential to be strong, he also has the potential to be weak, and I think there are plenty of strong Blackbeard pirates you can match up Sanji with, but very few weak enough for Nami to believably beat. Now while Sanji often deals with tricky opponents like Laffite, I don't think he will be particularly challenging for Sanji. Sanji has dealt with much trickier abilities, and I think the Blackbeard pirates are going to be the most underhanded and difficult villains for the Straw Hats to deal with, so I don't think this will be the best fit. The Straw Hat I think Laffite can pose the biggest challenge to is Nami. Laffite has shown Mr. Prince levels of sneakiness, but many people forget that Nami is also one of the sneakiest Straw Hats, which earned her the epithet of Cat Burglar. Laffite's Devil Fruit is definitely a wild card, and many theorize that it can be a mythical zoan like an angel fruit, but to me, it looks like it could just be a basic bird fruit. One option is that it could be a pigeon, which are also known for their homing skills, which could play into a battle between navigators. Because of the white feathers, my first instinct was a dove, which are often used by and are heavily associated with magicians. Now Oda has never explicitly stated this, but Laffite being a magician just makes so much sense when you look at everything about his character, from his hypnosis abilities to his top hat and cane. This fits perfectly with Nami, as the first thing that she ever did with her climb attack was a magic trick which summoned small white birds. Nami's final climb attack is also called the sorcery climb attack, which can create a contrast of stage magic versus scientific weather sorcery between Nami and Laffite. While Sanji often fights tricky opponents, Nami herself is a tricky fighter, using her knowledge of weather and the environment to create illusions and deal with opponents much stronger than her. So I think Nami having to face someone who can match her trickery will force Nami to grow more than she ever has. While I believe Nami will fight Laffite, many people are on board with her fighting Katrina Devon, since Oda usually has the female fighters fight each other. Katrina Devon is also known for beheading and collecting the heads of beautiful women, which could make her a sinister threat for Nami. But you can also apply the same logic to Robin as well. Now you could argue that Robin is more likely to fight a male opponent than Nami is, giving her the Laffite fight, but personally I view Laffite as a much more frail, glass cannon type fighter similar to Nami. Katrina Devon looks like a much tougher fighter, a mid-tier member of the crew similar to Robin's previous opponent, Black Maria, and her 9-tailed fox devil fruit and sword makes her look much deadlier than Laffite. I think Katrina Devon's transformation abilities would fit the best in a battle against Robin, as Devon's powers have been utilized for covert operations, similar to what Robin has been doing throughout her entire life. We pretty much get a glimpse of what this fight can look like in her Black Maria fight, where she uses illusions to transform her allies to trick Robin, so it wouldn't be crazy if Oda continued this theme. When Blackbeard went to take Boa Hancock's fruit, we got to see that Devon's murderous envy of women was only matched by Vasco Shot's drunken lust, and I think this disgusting duo will return in this fight and will fight together with the dynamic duo we saw in Wano of Robin and Brook. While I have pretty good reasonings for Robin's matchup with Katrina Devon, Brook's matchup was mostly decided by the process of elimination. But that's only because Oda puts the least effort in setting up fights for Brook, with his last 1v1 being in Fishman Island. But I still think we can squeeze something out of this, because in this fight, we got a moment where Brook was stabbed by a spear that dries you out. But he's unaffected since he's a skeleton. A similar thing can happen in this fight, where Vasco Shot tries to get Brook drunk with his alcohol fruit, but he similarly can't get drunk as a skeleton. But this won't make the fight one-sided, as Vasco Shot can still use his drunken Spitfire moves, which could clash with Brook's underworld ice attacks. As for potential power-ups, it's possible for Nami, Robin, and Brook to finally get Haki in this fight. I think observation would work well for Nami, as she already observes weather phenomenon, and ornament would complement Brook and Robin's fighting style. But I wouldn't bet on the Straw Hats getting Haki in this arc, given that it would have fit so much better into Wano, but that didn't end up happening. But Elbaf is another opportunity that is still possible for them to get Haki. Something weird we got from Franky post Wano was his new Wanted poster, which now features the Thousand Sunny instead of his face. It's not uncommon for the media in the One Piece world to get information wrong about the Straw Hats, but they already had Franky's face, which makes it a weird gag to start now. But what if this isn't a bounty poster that will need to be corrected, but actually foreshadows a future event, which is Franky fusing with the Thousand Sunny? Oda has showed in the SBS that Franky's bad timeline is him turning into a robot and then a battleship, but the tragedy of this future may not be him becoming a robot or a ship per se, but the fact that he will lose his individuality in the process. This may imply that the good future is that he will be able to retain his human form while having his robot form as a power-up. Oda has stated in the past that after One Piece was over, he wanted to draw a mecha manga, but during the story of One Piece, he was able to incorporate those ideas through the other characters, with Franky being our prime example. Some other characters that Oda might have included in his mecha manga could have been the Germa 66 characters, who are based on Super Sentai, or as we call them in the West, the Power Rangers. And if you ever watch Power Rangers, you know that their strongest forms are transforming into giant mecha. So Franky might be able to transform the Sunny into a mecha, the same way he transformed his Brachio tank and his motorcycle into the General Franky, which I can imagine would impress Luffy and Chopper to no end. And if the Thousand Sunny is sentient like the Going Merry, which Film Red suggests, it's possible that Franky will share the cockpit with his Klabottermon. If you agree with all this, then the obvious matchup for the ship turned Megazord Franky would be the colossal battleship himself, Sanjuan Wolf. The conclusion of this fight could likely satisfy the ideas that Oda had for his Mecha manga, with it being like a final battle between a mecha and a kaiju. Back when the Hachinosu section of Egghead was releasing in the manga, I gave my first shot on what the Blackbeard Pirates matchup would look like, which I still stand by mostly. The only thing I've changed my mind about is Sanji fighting against Burgess. My thinking was that since Burgess was introduced alongside Blackbeard back in Jaya, he seemed to be one of his most important men. Even after the introduction of Shiryuu, who seems to be the Zoro parallel, Burgess was still called the first ship captain, which I think puts him at least third in importance, a perfect place for a Sanji opponent. But now that I think about it, it's flawed to assume that Sanji's opponent has to appear early and clearly, because in that case, I probably would have matched up Sanji with Blueno instead of Jabra, just because the former appeared first in Water 7. I think a simpler matchup for Burgess would be to have him fight his fellow helmsmen of their respective crews, Jinbei. For the Blackbeard Pirates, I think every occupation-based matchup works really well, which just makes me even more certain about this matchup. Now beyond that, there's really not much of a narrative reason for these two to fight, but Jinbei doesn't really have the most interesting fights. The Jinbei vs Who's Who fight was pretty much just an exposition dump, with some pretty decent martial art attacks. So the only interesting angle I can really think of is contrasting Jinbei's skilled Fishman Karate and Fishman Jujutsu with Burgess's wrestling, which focuses heavily on brute strength and is enhanced further by his Devil Fruit. If Auger can up his choreography skills and showcases Jinbei overcoming strength with skill alone, this can potentially become a very interesting fight to watch, especially when it gets adapted into the anime. Burgess is also just the right level of strength to pose a challenge to Jinbei, because I know a lot of people think he's a bit too weak to fight Sanji, but Oda's always willing to make a character just as strong as the plot demands them to be. I think another Blackbeard pirate simply is stronger in a way that can challenge Sanji's character better. While having an early and cool appearance isn't necessary for a Sanji opponent, something that can make for a good one is allowing him to have a cool entrance. We've seen Avalo Pizzaro threaten the lives of Sword and requiring Kobe to destroy his hand to protect him, so I think Sanji casually replicating this feat would be a cool way to hype him up and introduce his matchup. Avalo Pizzaro can be an interesting matchup for Sanji, as it might make him have to search the entire island to find his real body, or potentially the whereabouts of Pudding if she's held captive on the island where they're fighting, which can showcase Sanji's observation Haki skills and give him a Mr. Prince-like moment when he finally finds them. Avalo Pizzaro is also from the North Blue and is known as the Corrupt King, which means that he's a lot like Sanji's dad, Judge, who is also a king from the North Blue, and he could potentially challenge Sanji ideologically on this, the same way that Queen did. But I think there's a much more interesting route, and that is if the Blackbeard Pirates challenge the Straw Hats on their weak areas rather than their strength. Zoro defeated Pika using his Ornament Haki skills, which he has an affinity for, but Sanji has to defeat an upgraded form of Pika despite his affinity being an observation. So it would be very interesting if this was where Sanji had to upgrade his Ornament Haki. Sanji has stated that his upgraded exoskeleton, in addition to his ornament, allowed him to make his flames hotter. But if he got an upgrade to his Ornament Haki this time, he could potentially make his flames even hotter, surpassing Ifrit Jinbei. I'm pretty sure blue flames are the hottest it gets, but this is a fantasy series, so Oda can go the Naruto route and make black flames the hottest there is, which I think would be the perfect final power-up for a fighter named Blackleg Sanji. Zoro vs Shiryuu is also a very obvious matchup. They are both swordsmen and the number 2s of the crew, and they were both freed from captivity by their respective captains in their introductions. While I've always been sure that Shiryuu is a Zoro opponent, the thing that threw me off at first is when Oda revealed that he had eaten Absalom's invisibility fruit. But if we're going with the idea that each Blackbeard pirate will be exploiting each Straw Hat's weakness, then this starts to make a lot more sense. If Sanji has to fight an upgraded version of Zoro's past villain and improve his ornament, then it only makes sense that Zoro will have to fight an upgraded version of Sanji's past villain to upgrade his observation. We haven't seen much of Zoro's observation Haki, despite the fact that he may have been the first one we've seen use it during his fight with Mr. One. So I think it would be interesting if we can go full circle and return this idea to the breadth of all things and apply that to what we know about observation Haki as Zoro upgrades to another level. In order to learn how to cut steel, Zoro had to learn enough sword skill to be able to not cut anything. Shiryuu's fruit isn't the invisibility fruit, but it's called the Clear fruit. So if the awakened form allows him to not only turn invisible, but also intangible, that can make it so Zoro has to learn how to literally cut nothing to defeat him. And here's another common idea. After Zoro defeats Mr. One, he jokingly asks Zoro if he's going to learn how to cut diamond next. While Shiryuu probably can't eat the diamond fruit now, he could potentially feed his sword to the diamond fruit, or maybe he could just buy a diamond sword somewhere, and requires Zoro to fulfill this narrative promise Oda has set up by having Zoro have to learn to cut diamond in order to defeat Shiryuu. These theories may be enough for you if you believe Shiryuu would just be a stepping stone for Zoro's goal, but as I've theorized in my previous video, I think Zoro will challenge and defeat Mihawk and Elbaf, and will come into this fight as the world's strongest swordsman. In the last video, I already laid out my reasonings why I believe so strongly that Shanks and Mihawk will go down in Elbaf, and that Blackbeard will be the one that kills Shanks to motivate Luffy. But I think a similar thing can happen with Shiryuu and Zoro. Perhaps Shiryuu won't kill Mihawk, but he can potentially sneak him using his devil fruit trickery and take his sword, similarly to how his captain stole the Girl Nami from Whitebeard. It is a common trope in fiction where a villain will take a powerful weapon and believe that they will become invincible as a result, but the hero must show them that the power doesn't reside in the weapon, but the user instead. Shiryuu can think that him now having Mihawk's blade Yoru, the black blade of the world's strongest swordsman, will make him the world's strongest swordsman like Mihawk was. But Zoro, as the true strongest swordsman in the world, will show that it's a swordsman that makes the sword strong and not vice versa. This could be the way that Zoro unlocks a black blade himself, if he hasn't already unlocked it in his fight against Mihawk. Many people believe that Mihawk has to be Zoro's final fight, but I think there's so much potential in seeing Zoro fight as the world's strongest swordsman before the series ends. We see that Mihawk lectures Zoro in his first fight, and Zoro does the same to Hyozo on Fisherman Island. So I think Zoro cutting through Shiryuu's trickery and teaching him a lesson about the value of swordsmanship as the world's strongest swordsman would be extremely satisfying. Finally, this leads to Luffy versus Blackbeard. Like most of Luffy's fights, this fight will likely come last and encapsulate everything that Oda is trying to say with this villain group and the story arc as a whole. Blackbeard has been built up to be the most nuanced and interesting villain in the series, and the contrast and symbolism in his rivalry with Luffy is the best in One Piece, if not in manga in general. So let's take a look at all of the parallels and themes between these two rivals and how Oda can express these themes through their inevitable fight. Back when Blackbeard was first introduced in Jaya, he was actually on the same side as Luffy ideologically. While Bellamy mocked Luffy and co., Blackbeard understood how important pursuing dreams is to pirates that are aiming for the top, no matter how fantastical they are. This can reflect in their fight thematically through devil fruits, which are the incarnation of dreams, as Vegapunk has revealed. Both Luffy and Blackbeard have become extremely powerful through devil fruit abilities, although Luffy seems to be focused on quality in contrast to Blackbeard's quantity. But while both Luffy and Blackbeard have the same big dream on paper, which is finding the One Piece and becoming the Pirate King, what that means is different for the both of them. The Pirate King, as the ruler of the seas, has the power to change the entire world, which is what Blackbeard's goal is. With that freedom and power, Blackbeard can expand the chaos of his home base of Hachinosu into the entire world. Luffy, on the other hand, can expand the liberation that he has brought to kingdoms like Alabasta, Dressrosa, and Wano to a global scale as well. This reflects in their devil fruit. While Luffy and Blackbeard's devil fruits are both powerful, the effects they have are completely different. Blackbeard's ability allows him to engulf and destroy. Luffy's ability allows him to soften and stretch things, allowing him to fight freely. Within the context of this fight, Luffy's awakened ability to turn anything into malleable rubber can allow him to negate and absorb the destruction of the Girl Nami, showing that his version of freedom is the direct counter to Blackbeard's. Now that Luffy is the Sun God, his fruit can thematically contrast the darkness of Blackbeard's Yami no Mi, the same way that Ace did in his fight. Luffy has also been revealed to be a Zoan fruit user, so Blackbeard can become one as well by getting a third and final devil fruit. Blackbeard getting a third devil fruit is such a unanimously agreed on theory that at this point many fans would be disappointed if it didn't actually happen. Blackbeard already has the strongest, or at least the most destructive, Paramecia and Logia fruits respectively, so it only makes sense if he completed his set by getting a powerful Zoan fruit as well. The number 3 is a number that is heavily associated with Blackbeard. From the 3 guns that he always has on his waist, inspired by the real life Blackbeard, but also the 3 sections of his beard post time skip, and most strikingly, having 3 skulls being the defining feature of his Jolly Roger. The real debate is determining what Blackbeard's third devil fruit will be, and while there are a lot of theories, some are much better than others in my opinion. I'm pretty convinced it will be a Zoan, as Oda would never let Blackbeard actually kill Boa and take her fruit, especially since it doesn't fit him or the rule of 3 that's been established between Blackbeard and the devil fruit types. Some might just assume that Blackbeard will just take the strongest Zoan that we've seen in the story, like Kaido's dragon fruit for example, which should still be out there. But while Oda is willing to reuse stolen devil fruits for Blackbeard's crew, I don't think Blackbeard will reuse a fruit for a main villain, since that'll make the story and Luffy's fights a little bit repetitive. Oda makes sure to give each main villain their own personalities and beliefs, and correlates that with the perfect setting and the perfect ability for that character. So for that reason, I don't think Blackbeard will have a fruit that we've seen so far, even if it's been underutilized like Marco's Phoenix fruit or Sengoku's Daibatsu fruit. It is much more likely to me that Blackbeard has his own unique fruit which fits his personality that we've never seen before, and I've seen two pretty good theories of what that can be. One idea is that Blackbeard could have the Cerberus devil fruit, as Cerberus has 3 heads which fits perfectly with the 3 skulls of his Jolly Roger. Blackbeard also leaves 3 scars on Shanks' face, which we know was caused by his claw weapon, but this could have been foreshadowing that he would get a Zoan fruit that gives him claws. Cerberus in Greek mythology is the hound that guards the underworld, which you can sort of map onto Blackbeard's character in multiple ways, but personally I don't think it fits Blackbeard as the quintessential pirate as well as the other theory does. My favorite idea of what Blackbeard's final fruit could be is the mythical Kraken devil fruit. A Kraken fits the pirate aspect of One Piece much more than any Zoan we've seen so far, although that might be because sea-based fruits are kind of pointless if you can't swim. But in his hybrid form, Blackbeard could take an appearance similar to Davy Jones in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. Both characters are based on historical depictions of the real-life Blackbeard, and Oda's not afraid to take inspiration from more modern media sources when creating character designs. Kraken are pretty much just giant squids, and squids also have 3 hearts, which fits with the rule of 3 that goes with Blackbeard's character. But it can also be connected to how Blackbeard stole his devil fruits. The only time we've seen somebody get a devil fruit without eating it, or using Vegapunk science, is when Big Mom ate Mother Caramel and somehow got her fruit. So perhaps consuming the lineage factor or DNA of a fruit user is enough to transfer the abilities, and maybe specifically eating the heart is the key to stealing devil fruits, as Whitebeard already had a hole in his chest in Marineford, giving Teach easy access. Perhaps this is a dark secret that only Blackbeard or the Gorosei know about, and no one else is vile enough to try, explaining why Blackbeard did it under a tarp. But while I do think devil fruit abilities could be contained in the heart, I'm not convinced that this is the reason Blackbeard can eat a 3rd devil fruit. I don't think Blackbeard has already eaten his 3rd devil fruit, and that is the reason why he's able to eat multiple fruits. It's much more likely to me that Blackbeard eating multiple fruits is related to some special trait of his human body, like Marco suggested. In Egghead, Saturn revealed that Blackbeard had a special bloodline, shortly after it was revealed that the Buccaneers have a special trait too. It's possible that these traits are one and the same. Kuma's ability to keep on moving despite his brain being shut off could explain how Blackbeard's unable to sleep. Perhaps Buccaneer bodies can just move on their own. Buccaneers having some giant's blood in them are supposed to be large, but Blackbeard's only about half the size of Kuma, and even if he really is Zebek's son, Rocks doesn't seem to be that large either, at least for One Piece standards. This theory is kind of similar to another theory of Blackbeard having multiple souls within one body, with the common version being that he has 2 twin brothers who would switch out with him throughout the story. My rendition of this theory is that Blackbeard has the souls of his 2 sisters that Oda revealed in a sketch, and they were sealed inside of him with the Yami Yami no Mi by Zebek. And then Blackbeard hunted down the Yami Yami no Mi to liberate them, and Ace's shocked face is from an off-screen scene where Blackbeard revealed them to Ace during their fight on Banaro Island. But I can agree that it's a huge reach to craft this super specific and tragic story for Blackbeard, with such little evidence to go by. But I strongly believe that at least one of Blackbeard's fruits will have formerly belonged to Zebek, as we know devil fruits represent dreams, and Blackbeard will carry on Zebek's inherited will. The final question when it comes to Blackbeard's devil fruits is if they will become awakened by the time he fights Luffy. While I think it would be cool to see Blackbeard with an awakened Zoan as well, along with the full destructive power of the Girl no Mi, I don't think it would make too much sense given how little time he's had these fruits for. The only one I could sort of accept is if he awakened the Yami Yami no Mi, as it was his first fruit and it fits him uniquely. And a Logia awakening of turning the entire battlefield into a vortex where all devil fruit abilities are negated is a sick idea. But as I've said, Blackbeard seems to be going for quantity instead of quality like Luffy, and awakening your fruit seems to be a sign of mastery. But Luffy's fruit could just be so cracked that it can match 3 awakened fruits at the same time. The important thing to me is that Blackbeard and Luffy are somewhat equal when it comes to devil fruit abilities, as devil fruits as a power system represent dreams, and these 2 are equally big dreamers. This will highlight the real aspect that will determine this fight, willpower, which is represented by the other big power system of the series, Haki. When Blackbeard gets his 3rd and final devil fruit, he might become one of the strongest characters in One Piece history, and at least strong enough to defeat Shanks, which has been foreshadowed for the longest time. And if Blackbeard can defeat Shanks, he will completely destroy Gear 5 Luffy, due to the Yami Yami no Mi being able to disable devil fruit abilities. But I don't think Blackbeard's advantage when it comes to devil fruits will decide the fight, because like Kaido said in Wano, Haki conquers all. Roger was able to conquer the seas and become the Pirate King with Haki alone, and that's what I think Blackbeard and Luffy will be fighting for, the title of Pirate King and the One Piece treasure on Laugh-Tale. Oda gave us a taste of the God Valley incident in Egghead, but he only teased the event and focused on Kuma's perspective, cutting off and not even showing Rock's and Roger's clash. But I think that's because he's saving the full flashback for this fight, as I believe Rock's and Roger's clash will inform the conflict between Luffy and Blackbeard. I believe Oda will consolidate Blackbeard's backstory into the God Valley flashback. For instance, we can start in Hachinosu and learn about the treasure that started the God Valley incident, and then after God Valley we can see how Blackbeard was groomed to become the new Rocks. Similar to Kuma's flashback, we can get a montage of Blackbeard's life, from him joining the Whitebeard Pirates, to his betrayal and actions throughout the story, and even him defeating the Whitebeard remnants in the Payback War. Then we can finally end with the Rocky Port incident, showing how Blackbeard took over Hachinosu and cemented himself as an Emperor of the Sea. To me, there are three possibilities when it comes to Blackbeard's relation to Rocks. One, he's either his son like Ace is to Roger, but Oda rarely makes his character relations that linear, as Ace turned out to be Whitebeard's successor and Luffy was actually Roger's. Option 2 is that Teach was Rocks' apprentice, similar to how Shanks was Roger's apprentice. But while there are big parallels between Blackbeard and Shanks, Blackbeard will only have been 2 when Rocks was defeated in God Valley, so he couldn't have learned anything from him. Option 3 is that Teach was groomed to be the successor of Rocks, similarly to how Luffy was molded by Rayleigh to become the next Goldie Roger. This option is the most likely to me, given the fact that Luffy and Blackbeard will be the central dynamic of the series. So having Luffy's dynamic with Roger mirror Rocks and Blackbeard's could flesh out all 4 characters. That begs the question, who was Rocks' Rayleigh? The Rocks Pirates notoriously had no loyalty to their captain, each one being a conqueror and a king in their own right, and 3 of them went on to become emperors of the sea. An interesting candidate to me would be Wang Ji, who could have been overshadowed by the others in strength, but perhaps he was truly loyal to Rock. Wang Ji can serve as the mentor role in Blackbeard's story, like Saul, Corzon, or Shiryuu. If Oda uses the tragic Straw Hat formula on Blackbeard's backstory, it could cement him as one of the greatest villains in the entire story. But an interesting twist would be highlighting Blackbeard's treachery by having him kill his master, as we do know Blackbeard defeated Wang Ji and took over Hachinosu during the Rocky Port incident. Many people theorize that Rock's D. Zebek will be a Buggy-like figure, having strong crewmates but being weak himself. But I believe Rocks is more like Blackbeard in this aspect, as he built himself a crew not based on trust, but pure utility and common interest. This parallel makes much more sense than Buggy and Rocks to me, since Blackbeard seemingly has taken after Zebek, naming his ship after him and sharing the same goal to conquer the entire world. So I think Blackbeard's approach to building a crew is taken from Rocks as well, and the same can be true for his Devil Fruits, as I believe at least one of Blackbeard's fruits will be revealed to formerly belong to Rocks. Either the Gura no Mi before Whitebeard took it after God Valley, or the Yami Yami no Mi, which fits both Blackbeard's and Rock's goal to engulf the world in their darkness. Or perhaps the mythical Zone fruit that we haven't seen before, which will be the third and final fruit for Blackbeard to inherit. While I believe Blackbeard will be a powerful fighter when we see him in action, I don't think he will be strong in Haki, or even have Conqueror's Haki at all. It's true that Blackbeard has large goals and is as big of a dreamer as Luffy, but that is already represented in the power system of Devil Fruits, which he has shown to be a monster in. Haki is all about willpower, and the one trait that all conquerors have is the inability to back down from a fight. That's what separates characters like Luffy, Zoro, and Kid, who never back down, even if it means they will lose the fight, from characters like Law, Sanji, and Blackbeard, who are very willing to retreat and come back with a better plan to win. I know Conqueror is in the name, but there's a reason why Oda has revealed Zoro and Yamato as conquerors and not Blackbeard or Crocodile, despite the latter actually having plans to take over the world. You have to imagine it like schemers versus warriors, calculated strategists versus innate instinct, in which case Blackbeard falls more into the former than the latter, and is not qualified to be a Conqueror's Haki user. In Blackbeard's journey, he schemed his way to the top, lying in wait under Whitebeard's wing and stealing Devil Fruits. Meanwhile, Luffy fought everyone who got in his way, and developed his Haki through training and fierce fights. That is why Blackbeard is a Devil Fruit merchant and Luffy is a Haki monster, because while they both have strong dreams and strong Devil Fruits as a result, Luffy has a much stronger will, so he has much stronger Haki as a result. While Blackbeard will be able to negate Luffy's Devil Fruit powers with his Yami Yami no Mi, but perhaps Luffy's Haki will be so strong that Devil Fruits don't even work on him, which we have seen before, and this can make the fight end the same way that the Lucci fight or the Crocodile fight ended, with Luffy using his pure willpower to overcome the villain. Luffy will be able to defeat Blackbeard with Haki alone, doing what Shanks cannot and achieving Haki that equals Gold D Roger. Because like Kaido stated, Roger conquered the sea with Haki alone, because Haki transcends all. And Kaido likely learned his lesson when he witnessed Roger defeating Rocks on God Valley, mirroring Luffy versus Blackbeard. So now that I've laid out all of my evidence and reasoning, let's recap to take a look at what this arc and the Blackbeard conflict as a whole could look like. This arc would begin after the honorable duels of the Red Hair Pirates and the Cross Guild in Elbaf, which could end with the Blackbeard Pirates defeating Shanks, using his final Zone Devil Fruit as his power-up. With the final road poneglyph found, the Straw Hat and Blackbeard Pirates will race to the final island, Lodestar, where Nami will discover the location of Laugh-Tale. The Blackbeard Pirates will have Pluton in tow, after successfully raiding Wano, and Kuzan will betray Blackbeard to keep it out of his hands. That will leave 10 Straw Hats and 10 Blackbeard Pirates to duke it out. The fated fight between the Blackbeard Pirates and the Straw Hats will devolve into clean 1v1s. Ussop will have a sniper duel with Auger, and he will have to bring his observation Haki to another level to predict where Auger will teleport and shoot him before he gets there. Nami will meet her match as the elusive navigator Laffite will challenge her weather sorcery with his stage magic-like abilities. The former assassin Robin will defeat the shape-shifting covert specialist Katrina Devon, and her perverted buddy Vasco Shot will be defeated by Brook, who will help Robin once again. Franky will live up to his wanted poster by fusing with the Sunny to become a giant mecha capable of defeating the colossal battleship Sanjuan Wolf, and Jinbei's fisherman martial arts will come out on top, overcoming the sheer strength of Jesus Burgess. And while Zoro is an ornament specialist and Sanji is an observation specialist, Sanji will have to take his ornament to the next level, fighting the island man Avalo Pizzaro, and Zoro will have to hone his observation skills to locate and cut down the invisible man, Shiryuu, each conquering their own respective weaknesses. The Blackbeard Pirates have captured both Garp and Pudding, and while Pudding's awakened third eye could be the key to unlock the secrets of the poneglyph, her Devil Fruit powers to read memories could be the key to unlock the secrets of God Valley, as she can peer into the mind of the man who fought alongside Roger against Rocks. This could give us the Rocks flashback, showing us how Roger defeated him and conquered the seas through pure Haki, which could lead into Blackbeard's flashback as he follows in Rocks' footsteps. That can then inform the present day, as Luffy repeats history and defeats Blackbeard and ends the rivalry once again, achieving Haki that equals Roger's and earning his championship title as a Pirate King and his prize, which is the One Piece. Now whether Laugh-Tale is up in space on the moon or deep below the sea in a sunken city, I do believe Blackbeard will be the gatekeeper, and only once he's defeated would we be able to see what awaits us. In fact, once Robin reads the poneglyph on Laugh-Tale and gives us a story of Joy Boy and his downfall to Emu and the world government, that will be the perfect setup for the Straw Hats to enter the final arc and the final war. That to me is the strongest evidence that Blackbeard will not be the final villain, but he will be the penultimate villain, and will have his own time to shine separate from Emu in his own arc. As for what the One Piece is and how the story will end, I'll discuss this in the next video, where I'll explain my predictions of how the revolutionaries, marines, and the Gorosei will fit into this final battle, and what the final matchups and fights in the series will be. So if you did enjoy this video, please like and comment where you think the Blackbeard Pirates will fit into the story. Subscribe to get notified about the final part of this trilogy if it hasn't come out already, and for future One Piece content alongside my regular dissection videos. And with that, I'll see you in the next prediction video.